Today what I'd like to do is go over a commonly neglected area of this machine called the wet cup assembly. And I'd like to basically show you how to maintain it, how to make sure that it's working, how to clean it, and basically just discuss the purpose that the wet cup assembly performs. Basically, the wet cup assembly consists of a bottle full of throat seal oil or throat seal liquid, which is this here, and it has two lines. There are two check valves inside here, and then there's a collar here. And this is probably the most important part of the system, is this collar here. I have an example of what that collar looks like here. What we find in the industry basically is that this particular area is kind of forgotten. It's kind of neglected, and what happens is eventually what it does, it leads to a lot of problems. It can actually lead to catastrophic damage to this section of the pump. It can actually lead to this blue housing cracking and breaking, and basically it all amounts to downtime when you're not spraying anymore. So a close inspection of this particular system will show you that we have about 2/3 of a bottle of the throat seal liquid, and then if we look closely, you'll see that there is actually a thicker layer, a darker layer on the bottom here. And basically what that is actually crystallized ISO, and it's in the bottom because it's heavy and it likes to go to the bottom, so it's showing that the system is doing what it's supposed to. So what we're going to do is we're going to disassemble it, basically spin this bottle off. You have to work these two check valves out. Sometimes that requires you to shift them a little bit in the bottle. What you'll see inside is basically you have a pickup. This is your pickup. This one actually is pulling the oil in from the bottle, and then this is basically putting it back in the bottle as it goes around the system. And of course it's going to make a mess. It's always good to have some paper towels on the floor for that. When you need to clean this out, you want to basically pull off your filter in the bottom here. It's just a small screen filter. It pops off the bottom. You want to make sure that it's clean. One of the ways to make sure it's clean is to have some air handy. Just blow it out, which I have right here. I have a garbage can, so I would basically blow it out and make sure that it's all clean. And we'll set that aside for a minute. If this system is neglected, one of the first things that happens is that the oil that you see running in here starts to thicken to the extent that it actually stops moving in these small lines. They're relatively small diameter lines, and as the material starts to get thicker and thicker, it starts to take on more of the viscosity of a paste, and it'll actually plug these lines up. So one of the ways to clean these lines out, if they're not completely seized up, is to actually blow air through this system and clean it out. What you want to do, obviously, make sure you have safety glasses on, and if you look very, very closely at these check valves, what you'll see is that there's actually an arrow pointing in the direction of either the fluid or air. That's the direction that it's supposed to go. So this one is because it's the intake, the arrow points this way. Because this one is depositing back in the bottle, the arrow points that way. So if you need to clean it out, you have to put your air in this side, and you want to make sure that your deposit line is pointing into a waste, and you slowly put a little bit of air pressure to it, and you can clean it right out. Now we know the system is basically free of debris, it's clean, and it's actually making it through from this check valve all the way into this collar. It's working its way through the collar, and it's actually coming back on the other line. We know that that's all free of any kind of obstruction. So at that point, this system is cleaned out. Then we would basically look at our bottle, and we would want to clean out our bottle. And like I said, we had a layer in the bottom that we're going to dump out. And it is all oily, so it's good to have plenty of rags and wear gloves. I find that if you do have any residual mess in the bottom, that the easiest thing to do is tuck a rag in there, and then with a paint stick, get in there and clean it real good. You don't want to leave any of that residue in the bottle. Now the bottle's nice and clean. We're going to put fresh throat seal oil in the bottle. And you want to fill that 2/3 full. It's also very important that you keep this throat seal supply bottle sealed when you're not using it. Some folks like to cut the little pour spout. You can open it this way as well. Some people cut that off, and when they do, they lose the cap, and then your bottle isn't sealed. And this is basically a hygroscopic material that will start to absorb moisture. So you want to keep it sealed at all times. Put our screen back on the bottom. Actually, what we're going to do now is, before we put the screen back on the bottom, we're going to prime the system. It helps to get this system recharged. It helps to actually fill the intake line, and a lot of times what people will do is they'll drop this whole thing back into the bottle without priming it, and then the system never actually primes, in which case it never really actually starts working anymore. That's actually what's nice about this small little tip, is you can prime it. This fits right in here. You fill the system. Now we know our intake line is full. We can put our screen back on the bottom, and we can replace our mechanism in the bottle. Now note, as it's going in the bottle, right now our pickup is lower than our return line, and that is fine just to get these two check valves past each other so they can fit through the opening of the bottle. Once they're in there, you actually want to reverse that. You want the intake to be way high in the bottle, and you want the return line in the bottom. And that's so that the intake is picking up clean oil from the top, and the return line is depositing potentially crystallized ISO in the bottom. And that's what forms that layer that we saw when we first examined this bottle. So if you have them reversed, your intake will actually be drawing the crystallized ISO back into the system, and that's obviously not going to make, it's not going to work well. We replace that, and we then want to verify that our system is working. And the best way to verify that is to put the system in jog mode and actually run the entire system, which I will do now. By placing the system in jog mode, we can actually run the machine without spraying. It's basically in a recirculating mode. We can turn it on. And we can turn the speed up a little bit. And the way you know that this system is working is that these lines actually pulse, which you can feel with your finger, and you can also see. Both lines should be pulsing. What that tells you is that the material is coursing through the lines correctly. So at this point, this system is functioning exactly the way it's designed.